Hey everybody, hopefully some more will come soon, but we're going to look at something I called Brave New 1984 for a reason you'll see here in a minute, but hopefully you guys are familiar with the books, and I'm going to read you a quote from them in a minute. First let me shout out who's here. We have Dom and Chow, Soundleys, Journey's Wake. Why aren't you blue? Let's make you blue. There we go. And anybody else who comes along later. As you can see, I've got Isaiah 5:20 on the page here. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Those are three Hebrew parallelisms. And so I'm pretty sure they're emphasizing that those, people who turn everything upside down, turn all values upside down. And then we also have 2 Timothy 3:1-5. But mark this, there will be terrible times in the last days. People will be, lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boastful, proud, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, without love, unforgiving, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not lovers of good, treacherous, rash, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying its power, have nothing to do with such people. And that pretty well describes the world. And we used to, we could have said this for many decades, even generations, but I think it's gotten orders of magnitude worse in the last probably 10 years. And, hey, AJM, I don't think I shouted you out. I don't know if I did, but, and it also says having a form of godliness but denying its power. I think this is something I referenced before, I don't know how many weeks ago, of a witch and a modern day Pharisee presuming to teach the Bible. They call it anti-religious Bible study. What they mean is anti-Christian, because they're fine with religion. They're in religion. They just think there's something superior about it as long as there's no great organization to it, which has nothing to say here or there on whether a religion is true or whether religion is worse than spirituality. They like to play with those terms. But I think that's the sort of thing that's being talked about here, is people with some form of religion who deny the power, which is actual spirituality, which is a relationship with God. So, I want to talk about the two novels that seem to be on two extremes, which is Brave New World and 1984. Brave New World is of course, a dystopian novel about the future where reckless hedonism is the norm, but decency and faith are considered shameful and heretical. So there's that complete inversion of values. And it was written, I think, in the 1930s. And, of course, 1984, which was written in the 40s, is about a harsh worldwide tyranny and zero freedom of thought or conscience. And though what these two extremes have in common is dehumanization, many people have wondered which extreme would come closer to eventual reality. But it turns out that we're living in both of these scenarios at the same time. Let me get you a quote from this article on the two books. What Orwell feared were those who would ban books. What Huxley feared, Huxley the author of 1984, and Orwell the author of... Orwell wrote 1984, Huxley wrote Brave New World. Okay, so what Orwell 1984 feared were those who would ban books. What Huxley Brave New World feared was that there would be no reason to ban a book, for there would be no one who wanted to read one. And that's pretty much where we are. No one wants, they don't have to burn or ban books, although they shadow ban them, they deplatform or cancel them. So that's the digital way of banning books, but they really don't need to, because people aren't reading them anyway, or they're reading them to twist them, just as people are twisting the Bible. Let me go on here. Orwell feared those who would deprive us of information. Huxley feared those who would give us so much that we would be reduced to passivity and egoism. And both of those are true also. Orwell feared that the truth would be concealed from us. Huxley feared that the truth would be drowned in a sea of irrelevance. Orwell feared we would become a captive culture. Huxley feared that we would become a trivial culture, preoccupied with some equivalent of all these things, these terms from the book, which is basically bread and circuses. We have both of those too. As Huxley remarked in Brave New World Revisited, the civil libertarians and rationalists who are ever on the alert to oppose tyranny failed to take into account man's almost infinite appetite for distractions, bread and circuses. In 1984, Huxley added, people are controlled by inflicting pain. In Brave New World, they're controlled by inflicting pleasure. In short, Orwell feared that what we hate will ruin us. Huxley feared that what we love will ruin us. So this is pretty well a description of how things have turned out. It's both and. It's not either or. Like I said, they do pull and shadow ban and cancel. I have hard copies of 1984. I don't think I have Brave New World, but the gist of both books is, without having to read the novels, is just what I've described here. Okay? Animal Farm is also one I have in print, which is a good one on the Bolshevik Revolution, where we get the phrase, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. So this is double talk, which, of course, led into the 1984 concept of doublespeak. Anyway, in my opinion, Brave New World is the tool by which 1984 is achieved. Let me say that again. Brave New World, the hedonistic, give them so much pleasure and distraction, is the tool by which 1984 is achieved. Because first you had to soften people up in the Western world. You had to get rid of the work ethic. You had to get rid of logic and reason. You had to teach people from the earliest ages to blindly accept authority, hate anyone who disagrees, and so that the authorities would never have to do their own policing. People would take care of that problem themselves because they're so thoroughly indoctrinated. And this is why I keep saying, if you want to change the world, start with the educational system and the media. Those are the things that have to be reclaimed if we want any hope of getting the world back to any form of sanity. Let's see. Anyway, so snowflakes and perverts, as we call them today, oppress people. The Brave New World side oppresses the others and creates the 1984 side. They oppress people who disagree with them, and they openly embrace nonsense and hypocrisy. Then the very concepts of reason, justice, compassion, and integrity are considered racist, and primitive now. It's considered racist to have a work ethic. Every day the news reports become more unhinged than the day before, not just the media themselves, but what they're reporting on, such as saying that since cake contains sugar that may have come from the Caribbean, it's racist. Cake is racist. I kid you not. I'm going to give you a link for that. Let me put that in the chat. There we go. And just to back up what I'm saying, this is how unhinged the world is, that people will say, a city council no less, that cake might be racist because its sugar might have come from the Caribbean. It's absolute madness. This is demonically inspired purging. As the saying goes, people are offended by everything but sin. I saw that posted on a meme in a Discord server where somebody took a picture of a church placard, where they put the little signposts out front. And it's true. People are offended by everything but sin. So this is a purge, and it's demonically inspired. There's no doubt about it. And this is what the Bible's referring to when it says at the end of Revelation that the devil will be put into the abyss for 1,000 years so as not to deceive the nations. So when he's let out, they're deceived again. This is the deceiving the nations that we've got going on here because, as I've said before, the whole incident that we've been dealing with for over a year now was blindly and immediately embraced by every world government down to the local level. That's not an accident, and I don't think the powers that be of the humans are that clever. I think this is Satan deceiving the world. So, I mean, we know that in history there have been many political purges in communist countries usually, but instead of seeing them as failures and tragedies, the modern world wants to repeat and enforce them. And so we have entered the age of anti-reason, which is fertile soil for the Antichrist. Our faith is based on reason and eyewitness testimony, which sets it apart from all others. So, of course, when you abandon reason, you take away the one thing that sets our faith apart, which also is prophecy, but you need reason to apply to understand the prophecies and examine history and compare the Bible and, make sure that everything lines up and the claims are true. But this invisible pestilence that we're dealing with, that the medical and political industries have presented over the last year or so, is the perfect pry bar against reason. It's anti-reason, anti-science, anti-compassion for people because of what it's doing to them, even just to be locked up, not let alone being injected with experimental gene therapy, which is primarily causing blood clots and other severe consequences, such as, you read, it's funny when you watch one of those commercials for some medicine that the side effects are horrendous and they call death a side effect. That's not a side effect. So this is the anti-reason age, and so we're primed for the Antichrist. And like I said, this is a pry bar against reason, this thing that they've been using, and we're going to reap the results of that. So people are now afraid of something they can't see, which is the genius of it, the evil genius of it, is that people are afraid of something they can't see. So they have to rely on traitorous officials who can't tell the truth to save their souls, which need saving. And those officials will keep changing the version of the invisible enemy forever to make sure people take injections forever. And whatever draconian lockdown and face diaper and whatever things they want to do, this is what they're going to keep doing. And it makes the traitors richer and the people sicker. So this is prophesied. As I had up here before, these two passages, one from Isaiah and one from 2 Timothy, about inverting values and the characteristic of our age. And this is exactly what we've got. Now, speaking of fear-mongering, though, I mean, this only took a short time to go over because it's just saying the obvious. I mean, this is prophesied, it's the world we live in, and we've got to hang on to reason and truth and compassion because these are becoming outlawed. That's how bad it is. It's a matter, I know, as I've said before, when the Egyptians were chasing the Israelites across the parted Red Sea, that God slowed down the Egyptians. He had the wheels of their chariots stick in the mud, and they had all kinds of mechanical problems, and that slowed them down, so that Israel would have time to completely cross over to the other side. And then, of course, God let loose the river or the waters, and it drowned the Egyptian army. God can do that now too. I mean, it looks for all the world to us like the Egyptian army is chasing us, and we're going to be taken because we're on foot and they're in chariots. But God can make the wheels stick in the mud. He can make their machines break. He can thwart their purposes so that things only happen in the time that they're supposed to. And what he's waiting for is the last Gentile to be saved. It isn't to say that Jews aren't being saved. It's saying that there's a certain number of Gentiles that have to be saved before God will rain down his wrath and purge Israel and then start the millennium. So this is how we know, the Bible is still accurate. This is how we also know that futurism is the proper interpretation, because we're watching it happen right in front of us. And anybody who wants to allegorize this, I'd like to see them allegorize job loss, death, and all these maimings that are happening through these gene therapies, the intimidation, the shaming. This is not an allegory. This is our reality. And so Bible prophecy has proved to be just as real. So, the pharmakia is the Greek word, of course. It can mean, it refers to drugs or potions, and is hard in the context of the New Testament, of Revelation especially, to know because it says people will not repent of their pharmakia, whether it means drug use or occult practices. It could be both, because typically hallucinogenic drugs and so forth were used in occult rituals, and so it's kind of very blurry between the two terms in their meaning. So this is a sign of the times as well. I mean, they've always existed. Those drugs have always existed. But it's the combination of things, and it's the increasing frequency and intensity, like birth pangs that Jesus said to look for, that tells us when the end is very near, because that's what we have, is an increase in intensity and frequency and an exponential rise in these qualities that you see here on the anti-qualities that you see here on the screen. But speaking of fear-mongering, it isn't just the political, medical, corrupt world that's doing this. Because of what they do, sometimes people will think, if they know anything about Bible prophecy, will think that this is the mark of the beast. You know, obviously the shot or jab or injection is the mark of the beast. People used to say that about QR codes. They used to say it about any sort of ID system, even social security numbers. Those are not the mark of the beast, because the one thing you must have to have the mark of the beast is the beast. And the beast has not been revealed. When does the Bible say the beast will be revealed? It will be revealed when he confirms or enforces a 7-year covenant between Israel and many. And so that has not happened. It's for 7 years specifically, and so the Antichrist has not yet been revealed. And it's 3.5 years after that point, the midpoint, when the Antichrist is possessed by Satan and declares himself God and defiles the temple. That is when when the mark is given and the command to worship the beast. So the thing is that we can know, if we know these details about prophecy, we know where we are in prophecy. The tribulation has not yet started, because that 7-year covenant has not been confirmed, thus identifying the Antichrist. And plus, Christians are still here, so, and that has to happen first, and then the revealing. I know people disagree with me, but you know why I say that. All right, so the thing is that people are becoming afraid. And we have to remember also about the mark itself, that it is an etching or engraving. Charygma is the word in Greek, if I remember right, and it's scratching into something. So the closest thing would be a tattoo, not a capsule such as the chip is, and not just requiring people to do certain things, such as getting injections. Injections are injected. They're called hypodermic needles, which is, hypodermic is from 2 Greek words meaning under and skin. So it's under the skin, it's a hypodermic, and the charygma is a scratching in the surface of something, in this case the skin. So the mark of the beast is more like a tattoo. It's not an injection. It will probably have some sort of DNA altering capability. I have no doubt of that. But the point is that we have to know what the Bible says about how to identify the mark of the beast. First you have to have a beast, and then the mark is an etching, and last but not least, the mark is the beast's name or number, not ours, not our personal ID. Okay? It is a tribute to the beast, and it can only be given knowingly and willingly to people who have decided to worship the beast, which is again why it doesn't happen till the midpoint of the tribulation. Now let me show you this. I'm not going to play the video, obviously, copyright and all that, and even though I have plenty of time today, I'm going to post the link for this in the chat. This is Footnotes. I haven't heard anything bad from him yet. I haven't listened, obviously, to all his videos, but he has this video called "Can You Accidentally Take the Mark of the Beast?" and he did this last April when things were just getting super crazy. It's only 12 minutes long. His videos are very short, so I would encourage you to watch it. He also has another one related to that. Let me post that one there. And I don't want it to start, called you can see the title there. I'm not going to say it. We'll give you the link. There you go. So, if you're really more interested in more in detail on what he says about the mark of the beast, I would encourage you to watch those. And then there's this page of mine. I have all this stuff about prophecy. I'm going to give you another. Oh, you can't read that link. Never mind. Sorry. That's my local link. I don't know why I have to keep doing that. I meant not to. Let me find the public link. Let's see. That's from my books. Ow. Let's try that again. It's from my prophecy book, Bible Prophecy Puzzle. And let me get the appendix on fads and misconceptions. That's the one I wanted to give you. So here you are. And what we're going to go over, there's all sorts of things here. The two witnesses, we can if you want. I have plenty of time, so I might just go over the whole page. But remember, let me go down to the mark of the beast first, so we don't forget what we went here for. It's in here somewhere. Yeah, right there. Revelation 13:17, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of its name. And Revelation 14:9 says, a third angel followed them and said in a loud voice, if anyone worships the beast and its image and receives its mark on their forehead or in their hand, they will be doomed, basically, if you go on to read that. So those are the two things we know verbatim from Revelation on the mark of the beast. Just looking at the chat real quick. Yep, Satan is deceiving the world. That's something I mentioned a little bit earlier. Yep. So what is the mark? The beast name or number is not our personal ID. Even if the world went back to using beads for currency, this mark would still be required to do business. But the fact that we have the technology makes it all the more clear that this is how they're going to achieve this. So technology technically doesn't matter. It's whether the mark represents your willing citizenship in the beast's kingdom. That's what it's all about. How is it given? It's etched on the forehead, head, or the right hand. Why these two locations? The most likely reason, and this is just speculation, is that it refers to the beast's withered right arm and blind right eye. If you look at Zechariah 11:17, that could be taken poetically. So it's hard to say, but this is, just something to bring to your attention. But regardless of the reason, here is where the mark is going to be, right hand or forehead. When is it given? After the seventh trumpet, which is in Revelation 11:15. How do we know when the seventh trumpet has been sounded? Here's the judgments in order by chapter and verse, and we will not see the mark of the beast until after all of those things have happened. And the first trumpet has not yet sounded, not even the first seal. So the mark of the beast won't come until after you see hail and fire coming from heaven that burns up a third of the earth, and a blazing mountain comes from the sky and it destroys a third of the seas. Wormwood, the burning star, hits the earth, and it affects a third of the rivers, and the word embittered is probably better said poisoned. Then the heavenly body's light is all reduced by a third, so we got a third in the trumpet judgments, whereas the seals were 1/4. Number 5, trumpet 5, is 5, 6, and 7 are 3 woes. The first woe is locusts from the abyss that torment enemies of God for 5 months. So they're only going to attack the unrighteous, which will be the majority. The second woe is 4 messengers or angels that are at the river Euphrates, and 200 million soldiers come from the east, the far east, and kill a third of the earth's population. In the descriptions there, you will see that it talks about spirits that resembled frogs, or reptilians, we might say today, coming out of the beast, the false prophet, and the dragon, and they bring this army from the east of 200 million. They might be demons, they might be AI devices of some sort, or they could be humans, but that's a huge army. And they kill a third of the Earth's population, and then after this sixth trumpet, the temple is measured, and we hear about the two witnesses. This is the first we hear about them, but it says they had been busy witnessing to the world for 3.5 years, which is another reason the church doesn't need to be there. In my opinion, since this is the midpoint, they had to start during the seal judgments at some point. At the very least, even if the seals are between the rapture and the confirming of the covenant, the two witnesses have to start 3.5 years before the midpoint. So they start when the tribulation starts. But they're killed at the midpoint, and then the world scoffs and mocks at their dead bodies and gawks at them in the city square of Jerusalem for 3.5 days. And then a voice from heaven says, come up here. They stand on their feet and they're taken up to heaven, and all sorts of things happen. But that's the sixth trumpet. And there's a seventh trumpet, or third woe, is when we're told about the two beasts, which is the first beast and second beast are also, the first beast is typically known as the Antichrist, but that term is actually more accurate for the second beast, which is also called the false prophet, which looks like a lion, or looks like a lamb and has horns and speaks like a lion. So, the horns are like the lamb. Sorry, I said that all backwards. But looks like a lamb, and is a lion. And so this is a fake Christian person, because the lamb refers to Christianity. Anyway, so this is how we know when the beast, mark of the beast happens. It's after all that. That has not happened. So we can't have had the mark of the beast. It's impossible to have had the mark of the beast. So saying all that to assure people that they haven't taken the mark of the beast, it's impossible. But let's go back here to other fads and misconceptions about prophecy, because this whole 1984 Brave New World, both of which we're living in right now, is really what Bible prophecy told about way before it happens. Yeah, whoever is leading the world false religion. Now, the thing I have to say also about the world religion, the one world religion, what the Bible actually says is that only time it talks about a world religion is when the beast desecrates the temple and demands that everybody worship him. That is the world religion. It's nothing else. Now, we know that people have been busy, people like Rick Warren have been busy trying to do what he calls Chrislam, or what people have called what he does Chrislam, blending Christianity and Islam. And we have the Talmudic Jews that are, these are three very corrupt versions, corrupt religions, false religions. There is a corrupt Christianity as well. Like I said, there will be a Christian leader, world, authority on Christianity, which is fake. But fake religion is what Satan's been all about. We have to remember also, just to digress a little bit, because I have time, is that the woman on the beast that is described in the mid part of Revelation is the religious system that Satan has been using in one form or another since ancient times. The beast is the beast kingdom, the kingdom of Satan, and the woman has ridden the beast, so it's been kind of a mutual benefit all this time, where Satan uses fake religion and needs it for his purposes. But we're told in Revelation that at the midpoint, the beast that has been carrying the woman will throw her off and destroy her, and because he hates her so much, and then he will say, everybody worship me. So we haven't seen the one world religion. There won't be one until the beast rises to power and at the midpoint has desecrated the temple and become indwelt by Satan. So, and why doesn't Gord have a wrench? I don't know. We'll just take care of that problem right now. All right. So anyway, we go on back to where we were here on the two witnesses. Revelation 11, 1 to 12, as I mentioned a little bit ago, that about when they had to start, they're individual human beings with miraculous powers who wear sackcloth and prophesy for 3.5 years. They were called also in the Old Testament the two lampstands, oil lamps, the two witnesses that stand before God. So we can't go beyond what the Bible gives us. So speculation is just pretty pointless, but we know that they are individuals. They don't represent something else. The olive tree and lampstands of the Old Testament are representative of these individuals. So that's how that goes. And the reference in the Old Testament is Zechariah 4, 3, 11, and 14. They're killed by the beast during the sixth trumpet judgment, as we just read. They're left in Jerusalem for 3.5 days and raised back. Anyone and anything that doesn't match all those criteria is not either of the two witnesses. So it isn't Israel and the church, it isn't political leaders, it isn't the Old and New Testaments, or anybody else. Okay? This is fads and misconceptions, and I'm pretty sure I gave you guys the link. So anyway, then there's this one. I haven't heard as much about this lately, but it was a fad for a while. Blood moons, tetrads, and Shemitah years. A blood moon is simply a lunar eclipse where the conditions are such that the moon appears reddish in color. A tetrad is when 4 such eclipses occur in a row. A Shemitah year is so named for the command to Israel to let their fields remain unplowed every 7th year so the land could rest. This is strictly for Israel, and I might add, obviously in an agrarian society, not anyone else, and none of the curses for failure to observe these years apply to any other nation. So these would, at best, only apply to Israel. None of these concepts are part of Bible prophecy. Yes, the moon will turn to blood and the sun to darkness are found in Scripture, but each context shows that they're not routine astronomical events, and usually also occur with the darkening and failing of the stars in those contexts. So that the prophetic red moon and black sun also go with darkening of the stars, which doesn't happen in a normal eclipse of any sort. One way those things can happen is if there was a volcanic eruption where the sky is blocked out. We know from the forest fires in the western U.S. that the east has been very hazy, and that's just why for several nights there have been a very red, deep red sunset of the sun, not the sky, but the sun itself is a deep red, and then it goes kind of pink as it disappears. And you will get a red or yellow moon at those times. So those are caused by particulates in the atmosphere, or the atmo layer, I like to call it. Another would be divine intervention, but the normal astronomical events cannot happen at the same time. So people get all excited about, blood moons and things like that, but they're leaving out too many details of Bible prophecy. So theories like these leave out any tetrads didn't occur on a significant date in history, and not all of the ones that did were before the events they allegedly pointed to. So it's very much cherry-picking and force-fitting the dates. And it makes us wonder why events such as the Holocaust, whatever you want to believe about that, were not foretold by any such signs. And there's an article here. Let me give you this link again just in case, because I want to make sure that you got it. You can go to this other article here for more details about these tetrads and things. So Scripture does say that the heavenly bodies serve as signs and to count off years, but this hardly means that every alignment of stars or every tetrad is a prophetic sign. There's more than one thing to look at. So there's no reason to think that astrological alignments or phenomena are foretelling world events. You have to put them with other things too. And when you connect the dots, it's like I've said before, anyone can connect any dots, but only the person who made the connect the dots puzzle can tell you, you got to follow a certain order, alphabetical, numerical, whatever it is. And if people don't follow that and make a different picture, that has nothing to do with its intent and nothing to do with the true meaning. Okay? The thing is that Israel, as I've said this before, if we disagree on who Israel is and who the church is, we won't agree on anything else. And the point is that Israel had to be in its land in unbelief, rejecting their Messiah, just as they were in the first century when they rejected Jesus the first time. And that's what we have today. We have a nation of Israel in the land in unbelief, opposed to God. And when it comes to just political aspects of things, I don't think the U.S. or any other country can point fingers at anyone else. All the world's leaders are corrupt, all the governments are corrupt, and so, picking out one of them is not making any sort of point other than hypocrisy. But the point is, for Bible prophecy, is that they had to be in their land in unbelief, and that's where they are right now. So I'd have to strongly disagree that the biblical Israel or spiritual Israel is the church. I strongly disagree with that, but I have videos on that, and I don't want to go into that today. What I'm doing today is that we are living in Bible prophecy, which is both 1984 and Brave New World. And because I have time, I'm going to spend more time on prophecy, which is why I'm going over this page. So, another fad in prophecy is this Muslim beast. Some people think that the beast will be Islamic, or the Mahdi or 12th Imam, however you pronounce that. First of all, we need to distinguish between the beast and the Antichrist, as I mentioned a little bit earlier. There are two beasts in Revelation, the first and the second is also called the false prophet. The first, primarily political, and will be the one possessed by Satan at the midpoint of the tribulation, desecrate the temple, make himself God. The second has to do with religion, as I mentioned, and would be the only one to really qualify as an Antichrist. This is the one who demands that everyone worship the first beast, and the one who will order the mark to be enforced. And that's the part that we've gone over already, is the mark of the beast. So the only possible connection of Islamic prophecy to the end times would be to the false prophet. But since no Muslim would pretend to be Allah, and their Mahdi would not demand that the world worship anyone on earth, that can't be it. So will either of the beasts be Muslim, even if not the Mahdi? After all, the method of execution for many will be beheading, according to Revelation 24. However, this one fact is hardly enough to identify the false prophet as Muslim. There are other people who would do that too, and they didn't invent beheading. They're known for it currently, but that doesn't mean nobody else will do it. So this will happen in the second half of the tribulation, after the false prophet has demanded the worship of the beast. So the beheadings of Revelation 24 have nothing to do with Islam, which in my opinion will be wiped out in the Gog-Magog war, the first one, way before this. It may be that beheading is simply the preferred satanic method of execution. Then does Scripture support someone of Muslim heritage who simply apostatizes, as to say a secular Muslim? Can we trace the lineage of either the beast arising from either Islam or a nation that practices it? In the 70 weeks prophecy of Daniel, that's Daniel 9, we're told that there's a coming prince, and it was to be the people of this prince that would destroy the temple, which happened in 70 AD. The Roman army often contained people of many ethnicities, but the lineage of those people does not necessarily apply to the prince himself. So the prince was Roman, and we know this, Titus. So who was the prince? I just mentioned he was Titus. He was neither Arab nor Muslim, since Islam was not invented until the 600s AD. You could point to the Ottoman Empire as having ruled the general area out of which the beast might come. The Roman Empire was always ruled by Europeans. No Ottoman Empire leader ever led the Roman Empire. And the type or shadow of the beast, who was Antiochus Epiphanes, was a Roman of Greek lineage. As for the false prophet, nothing at all is said about his lineage or people. So it's pure speculation when people say it must be a Muslim. I strongly disagree with that claim. But what did Jesus mean in John 5:43? I have come with the authority of my Father, and you won't accept me, but if someone comes by their own authority, you'll accept them. Many believe this means the Antichrist will be a Jew. Now, since many Jews will reject the beast when he desecrates the temple, it could only apply to those who remain. But Revelation 13:1 says the first beast arises out of the sea, which symbolizes the non-Jewish nations. Revelation 13:11 says that the second beast arises out of the land, which symbolizes the people of Israel. But it's the first beast who enforces the treaty, and the second who enforces the mark. So what are we going to say? And there's two of them, and so we have to really be careful what conclusions we jump to. There's a book by Philip Goodman called The Assyrian Connection, which proposes Assyrian per Micah 5:5. The Syrian will do this and that as the Antichrist. He argues that he'll arise out of the eastern leg of the old Roman Empire, an area dominated by Islam. But none of the passages to which he appeals clearly point to the coming Antichrist, or to the then non-existent religion of Islam. Not even Antiochus Epiphanes, who first fulfilled the prophecy of the abomination, was an Assyrian. He wasn't an Assyrian. And yet Jesus said that he is a type of the coming Antichrist. So I've said before, if you want to look at someone who almost completely fulfilled Daniel's prophecy of the coming Antichrist, though he didn't use that term, we know what to expect from the future because Jesus said this is going to happen again. He said, Daniel the prophet, the abomination of desolation, which is associated with this guy because he fulfilled it mostly, Jesus said that is going to happen again. So we look at him, and he was not Assyrian, and he was not Islamic, obviously. So the phrase the Assyrian could be an expression meaning the Assyrian people. That is called in Greek Heniades, if I pronounce that right, an individual representing the whole group. Just as we might say the American is going to rise up against tyranny, which isn't going to happen, but the American in that kind of a phrase means the American people, not one individual American. So we can't say there's an individual Syrian. More details in another article here. Something that mentions a guy named Walid Shubat. Haven't heard from him in a while. It's because he's a fraud. He claimed to have been a terrorist in the Middle East who became a Christian. He was never a terrorist. He was never an expert on Bible prophecy. So don't listen to Walid Shubat. But the strongest argument, in my opinion, against the Muslim Antichrist is that the present Islamic nations will be wiped out, as I mentioned earlier, about early in the tribulation. I have a chapter in my prophecy book on transitional battles, so you might want to look there. All religions will be outlawed when the beast declares himself God, including the Babylonian religion. And I have a Mystery Babylon section we're going to look at. The Antichrist will not be an atheist, but neither will he be identified with any form of religion. As I mentioned, I think it's Daniel 11 and 12. Islam is certainly serving a satanic purpose and supplies the motivation for the Psalm 83 coalition against Israel, but it won't be a significant entity in the tribulation, nor will the Antichrist or either of the beasts be Islamic. This is my opinion. I mean, you come here to get my opinions, not somebody else's. So, and hello to more people in chat. Now, we've gone over the mark of the beast, and now let's do Mystery Babylon. Again, if you just got here, the major theme here is the two extremes, dystopian novels, 1984 and Brave New World, and in my opinion, we're living in both of those right now. They're still, much worse it can get, but that's what we're living in. And so this is Bible prophecy that, predicted this long before Huxley or Orwell. So anyway, we study the Bible here, not Huxley or Orwell, but they make some good points. Mystery Babylon. So we're going to focus on the red beast, the harlot on the beast, which is also Babylon the Great, the false prophet or second beast, and where the beast is. Okay, so not every beast in Scripture denotes the same entity, such as we need to be very careful that we distinguish them. Where there's a kingdom, there must be a king, although a kingdom can span many kings in succession, but there must be some king around if it's a kingdom. And when the angel tells the Apostle John in Revelation that someone was, is, and will be, it may be referenced from John's time, which was the late 1st century. So we have to keep that in mind. Or it could be a poetic way of describing existence, which is past, present, and future. Okay, just time in general. For example, what was, is, and will come may refer to eternity, while what was, is not, will come, the Bible uses that phrase too, may refer to an entity which literally or figuratively had lived and died and then come back to life, such as something a kingdom can do, which is why you'll hear prophecy teachers talk about a revived Roman Empire. Okay, so Revelation 17, 7-14, I will explain to you that this is an angel talking to John. I will explain to you the secret not mystery, it's mysterion in Greek, which means something kept close, something concealed and guarded. I will explain to you the secret of the woman and the seven-headed, ten-horned beast that carries her. The beast you saw was, he's talking to John in the first century, the beast you saw was, is not now, so not the Roman Empire, and is about to ascend from the abyss and then be taken to oblivion. Okay? The beast you saw was, is not now, and is about to ascend. This is not speaking figuratively as to the timing. It seems to me that the angel is saying you can identify this beast with 7 heads and 10 horns by something that used to exist, is not now existing in your day, but will exist again. And again, Rome was the power at this time, so it is not now, can't be Rome. Okay? Thank you. Nice comments in the chat. Good to see you, good servant. Also, and others, Michael, Khan, lots of people. Anyway, so the 7 heads, now this is the thing. The angel is telling the meaning of the symbol, so we can't symbolize the symbols. The 7 heads are 7 mountains the woman sits upon. These same 7 heads are 7 kings. So the heads of the beast refer to mountains, which refer to kings. It's not the city on 7 hills. Not what it says. The 7 heads are 7 mountains, and mountains stands for kings. So there's 7 kings that the woman has presided over. 5 have fallen. This is a past tense to the time of the first century, when John is given the revelation. Okay? Past tense. 5 of the kings had already fallen. 1 is now. This is in contrast to the is not now. So the whoever is now is not the Roman Empire or the Roman Emperor. Not Nero, and in John's day it was Domitian, not Nero. Nero had already died and he committed suicide, so he wasn't the one that is prophesied to die by the breath of God. So this is the kings, not the beast, but the kings. Okay? 1 is now, and the other has not yet come. But when he does, he will only remain for a short time. This is a 7-year reign, or at least 3.5. The beast that was and is not now, there's the not now again. 1 is now. 1 is not now. The is the king. The is not is the beast. The 1 that is not now is an 8th that comes from the 7, if that isn't confusing enough, and is proceeding to oblivion. The 10 horns you saw are 10 kings who have not yet acquired a kingdom. They were future to the time of John, which was about 95 AD. And then we haven't seen them yet. But they will share royal jurisdiction with the beast for 1 hour. 1 hour is typically in prophecy in the Bible a short time. Okay? They will all be in agreement and given their power and jurisdiction, giving them to the beast. They will be 10 kings, we haven't seen yet, who will give their power to the beast. They will battle the Lamb, but the Lamb will conquer them, since he is the Master of Masters and King of Kings. And those with him are appointed and chosen and trustworthy. So it's confusing even when we stop and think about it. But we have our, as I like to say, edges and corners of the jigsaw puzzle that we can't go beyond. All right? Focusing on the beast and not the woman, we see that it existed before John's day, did not exist in his day, and would exist, once again, after his day, though no indication is given as to the length of time from his day to the time of the beast. It has 7 heads, which are a line of 7 kings, 5 of whom had fallen before the first century. The 6th was alive in his day, and the 7th was to come later, but only reigned for a short time. Connected with the 7, but distinguished from them, is the 8th and final king, who is equated with the beast itself. Yeah, confusing. However, this is a king rather than the beast system, since he, rather than it, will go to his destruction. The key to this entity is in verse 8, which specifies that the beast will ascend from the abyss. This ascension takes place at the midpoint of the tribulation as either part of the seventh trumpet or between it and the first bowl judgment. So the midpoint of the tribulation is when we will see the eighth king. The short time is the second half of the tribulation, meaning 3.5 years. Yet this beast will have to have existed before the 1st century AD. So it will be a king of the past who is brought back to life. Speculation, but it seems to be that this is what the scripture is giving me here. It will be one who has a useless right eye and right arm, we mentioned before Zechariah 11:17 and Revelation 13:2 and 3, wounds which either happened in the distant past or will happen 3.5 years after enforcing the treaty of Daniel 9:27. The latter, the one who declares himself God, seems more plausible, since at first he will be mistaken by the people of Israel as the Messiah, rather than the easily identified false shepherd of Zechariah 11:17. So he can't have his wounds too soon, or they would know this is not the Messiah. Perhaps he will claim to be King David, a scenario which could lead Israel to say peace and security and lay down their arms, setting the stage for Gog to attack them per Ezekiel 38:8-12. So yeah, it gets confusing, but now let's look at the woman who rides the beast. She is not the beast. People forget there are two entities here. She is not the same as the beast. Because people like to say it's the U.S. or New York or something like that. But there's a woman and there's a beast. So Revelation 17, then one of the 7 messengers or angels with the bowls came and talked with me. He said, I will show you the judgment of the great harlot sitting on many waters. The kings of the earth have been promiscuous with her, and the earth dwellers have been made drunk with the wine of her promiscuity. So this is someone, religious entity, who has had its claws or talons, that's what I meant to say, tentacles, I had a couple of things mixed up there, into all the governments of the world, the major governments. Okay, so it says, he carried me away in spirit into the desert, and there I saw a woman riding a red beast, covered with slanderous names, and having 7 heads and 10 horns. She was clothed in purple and red, those are royalty colors, adorned with gold, precious stones, and pearls. So this is someone posing as royalty. She had in her hand a golden chalice filled with the disgusting filth of her promiscuity. On her forehead was written a secret name, not Mystery Babylon, but a name that is mysterious or secret. A cryptic name, as one of the translations puts it. Babylon the Great is her name. Mother of harlots and disgusting things of earth. So she is not Mystery Babylon. She has a mysterious name, Babylon the Great, mother of harlots. I saw that she was drunk with the blood of the holy people and those who testify of Jesus. Could also describe the Hebrew roots movement that way. And I was aghast at the sight of her. Then the messenger or angel said to me, why are you shocked? I will explain to you the secret of the woman and the 7-headed 10-horned beast that carries her. Then he said to me, the waters you saw which the harlot is sitting on are peoples, multitudes, nations, and languages. We can't reinterpret those to something else. Okay? The 10 horns you saw and the beast will despise the harlot. They will despise the religious system that they've been using for their own purposes. And she's been using them and controlling them from behind the scenes. So a religious entity controlling the world, you figure it out from there. But at this midpoint of the tribulation, they will obliterate her, strip her naked, consume her flesh, and set her on fire. I mean, that's like, stabbing someone, shooting them, running over them with a bus, digging a hole, burying them, and setting it on fire. I mean, they really, really hate her. This is because God put it into their hearts to do his bidding, to destroy her, and to unite in giving their kingdom to the beast until the words of God are fulfilled. And the woman you saw is the great city that has sovereignty over the kings of the earth. City has to be a city, cannot be a country. I don't know why I can't highlight that too. It's just weird. So the woman riding the beast, the religious system, the religious entity, is not New York, Washington, or London, or Vatican. Or New York, or London, or Washington. But the Vatican is a city-state. It has to be a city-state. Babylon was a city-state. Okay? But a city nonetheless, a city country. So, put it all together, a religious system which is a city that rules over the nations. Okay? As the bulleted point list is, she sits on many waters, which symbolize people, multitudes, nation, and languages. She has committed adultery with the kings of the earth and intoxicated the earth dwellers or earthlings, a term used throughout Revelation for the unbelieving world. So if you're an earthling, you're one of the people who rejects God. She is in the desert, which is not necessarily a sandy area, but simply deserted or uninhabited. Now, the Vatican is in a very busy place. Now, it can move. And there's Dubai to consider. Just saying. She rides the red beast with 7 heads and 10 horns, which is covered with blasphemous names. She's dressed like royalty, purple, scarlet, gold, gems, and pearls, and carries a golden chalice containing the filth of her promiscuity. She has written on her forehead a secret or mysterious name, Babylon the Great. She's drunk with the blood of the saints, and she's a great city. Those are her attributes. These are the corners and edge pieces of the jigsaw puzzle. These are the things that have to all be true of some entity if we want to call it the woman riding the beast. So since she's neither the beast itself nor any of the kings, but rather has been using depending on them, and because the beast and the kings will hate her, we can rule out her being simply a government, a world government as we know it. Yet she has been associated with the beast and its kings for a long time, since the beast has come to loathe and resent her. When her usefulness to the beast has expired, which it will do soon, it will turn on her and utterly destroy her. Since the angel is telling John what the woman symbolizes, we can't take those characteristics as more symbolism. We just can't do that. She has deceived the world through its rulers. We can see that plainly now, although it hasn't been as obvious in generations past. This is clearly what's going on. She's in a desolate location. She is queen of the world, she calls herself. She's charged with all the debauchery and spiritual rebellion of the world. She's guilty of martyrdom of anyone who followed Jesus and all God's holy people, and she is a city with authority. So people who identify her often overlook these characteristics of being, especially the one of being a city. But in Revelation, we'll see additional details. She is a demon-infested place of great wealth and the hub of worldwide commerce, which includes not only luxuries, but also human trafficking. Okay? Calling herself a queen matches Isaiah 47 almost exactly. Queen of Heaven, she calls herself. And this was a term used for Semiramis, I believe. And in that passage, God mocks her by daring her to rely one last time on her sorceries and incantations, which of course means that she is steeped in the occult and in the dark arts. So, take all these things together. That passage also calls her virgin daughter of Babylon, which is an important tie to the ancient Babylonian religion. Though there are several possible candidates in the world today that might fit many of these characteristics, we have to insist that the real candidate has to fill them all completely. So we can rule out certain nations or ethnic groups, and her religious aspects must also match a literal city. But she's also called Babylon for a reason. So we expect her to use symbols, colors, and names associated with ancient Babylonian religion, even if the city is not presently literal ancient Babylon. According to historian Harry Ironside in Babylonian Religion, the destruction of Babylon forced the religious practitioners to flee, and they first went to Pergamos, or Pergamum, exactly where Jesus said the throne of Satan was in the first century, because when he writes to the church there, in the early chapters, chapter 2 or 3, I think it's chapter 3 of Revelation, where he says, where Satan has his throne. This is where the Babylonian adepts ran after the destruction of Babylon. They settled in Pergamos. From there, they moved to Italy and settled in Rome. Not the least bit coincidentally, this Roman headquarters used the symbols of Dagon, the fish god. Fish hats, anybody? And his priests wore the fish head hats and the fisherman's ring. As with a lot of things, though, everything else the Vatican did was to repurpose all the pagan symbolism into Christian things. And that's a whole different topic. You have to go by intent and think of whether this is actually still that religion and all sorts of things. People might need to do their own research on that, because you can take it kind of both ways. I think there's a lot of evidence on one side more than the other, but we have to understand that in any Christian denomination, which the Roman Catholic Church as an entity has some very bad theology, but this is not to say that everyone in it is an evil person or is necessarily lost, and we have to be careful as Christians not to simply bash and hate Catholics individually because they are not their rulers, just as Americans are not our government. What I was just saying about evil governments, not everyone, all the citizens in the governments, in the countries, is an evil person that agrees with what their government is doing. We certainly don't. And a lot of people in the Western world are simply victims of their governments. And this can happen in the Roman Catholic Church as well. Although they might not see themselves as victims at the time, and they may not be victims right now, but there are a lot of godly people, and I have to say that the scripture says at one point, calling people, his people, out of Babylon, as he might call decent people out of the U.S. And I'm just saying there's a principle here, and we as Christians have to remember what we're here for. Okay? So since this entity is a city which is the seat of Babylonian religion, which Israel is not, Jerusalem is not, they are atheists for the most part right now, has spilled the most blood of followers of Jesus, Israel has not done that either. Any country can spill blood, but which ones are picking on Christians? Those would be Islamic countries right now, and places, communist areas like China, a very bad religious persecution, not just of Christians, but also Muslims right now. And there are Hindus who are killing Christians in other parts of the world, like India and Pakistan. So it's a mess. It's a seething cauldron of hate and murder and violence. Gosh, that sounds like Genesis 6. The earth was filled with violence, and the thoughts of people was only evil continually. That's what brought the great flood. So anyway, we're not going to get a flood this time. We'll get fire, but we'll get this tribulation first. It also must be the hub of world commerce and human trafficking. Who are we to point fingers in our country? And is the seductive power controlling all the world's governments. We don't do that either. We're more controlled by other governments now. Take China, for example. But she is not the beast, nor the son of perdition, or Satan himself. So we have to know who the beast is and who the woman is. And then there's the second beast, the false prophet. I'm running over my time now, but I'll hopefully wrap this up. There's more than one beast in Revelation, but the second one is more commonly known as the false prophet. Revelation uses both names for the same person. This is not part of the beast or its heads, but is the highest ranking person below the beast. He is in charge of the worship of the beast, the first one, and is the one who actually orders the mark of the beast. And at the midpoint, the beast has dispensed with the harlot and now demands all the world's worship. We're shown two beasts in Revelation 13, one out of the sea, as I mentioned, one out of the land. And the mortal wound and all that we've gone over. This act of recovering from the head wound that it looks as if killed, doesn't say actually was, looks as if it was fatal and then rose to life again. This is a fake resurrection. Okay? This is what fools the world into thinking the beast must truly be God by seemingly raising the dead. And there will be many fake Christians who will fall for this. Starting in verse 11, we'll see the second beast described as the wolf in sheep's clothing. 2 horns like a lamb, but spoke like a dragon. Combined with its role of forcing the world to worship the beast, this person is a religious and governmental authority. Because of the description land, he poses as a Christian leader in some sense. And both these beasts are seen between the 7th trumpet and the first bowl. So, where is the beast? We've seen 3 major personages in prophecy yet to come: the beast, the harlot that rides it, and the false prophet. How can we, and if we can, how, tie them to today's world? We can in many respects, but the uncertainties still remain. The prophecy passage not covered here give more details, especially Ezekiel 38:39, about the Gog and Magog war that is desiring to plunder a nation recovered from war, living securely, a people gathered from many nations to the mountains of Israel, which had long been desolate. Okay? This is the motivation for Gog of the land of Magog and the horde of nations with it. The plunderers, they're coming for plunder to a nation that has just recovered from war and has riches. To Israel is that nation. From the far north, you and many nations with you all riding horses. But God himself destroys the vast army with an earthquake, plague, torrential rain, hailstones, and burning sulfur. And this is a different description than you read at the end of the millennium. Now there's some heavy hitter prophecy teachers. Trying to think of the guy's name. Can't think of it right now. That teaches that this is not two events. And he's usually right about a lot of things in the Bible. So, name escapes me right now. But anyway. There are differences, and that's what gets me about that. Daniel 11 speaks of the king of the north. This is about, we're getting into the where. King of the north, but this may have been at least partially fulfilled in the past. But verse 40 there says, at the time of the end, the king of the south will engage him in battle. So we got the king of the north and the king of the south battling each other in the time of the end. Many see a break between verses 35 and 36 in Daniel 11, since 35 has a praise until the time of the end. So it could mean that 36 through 45 are yet future, but Revelation 16 speaks of the kings of the east coming to battle at the sixth bowl. So we got north, south, and east. What's left out? What about the west? Does this omission imply that the beast kingdom will also arise from the western world? Daniel's prophecy of 70 weeks implies that the prince that shall come is the first beast of Revelation, and given the scope of the war and battle from the other three directions, it would seem that the only place left for the kingdom of the beast is the west. Just a process of elimination, that's all I'm doing here. 8/10. Keep in mind also that the harlot is associated with Babylon's religion and a powerful city. The beast will hate her and destroy her, so it seems fairly certain that the west is not Babylon. But it may well be the kingdom of the beast. I don't know how you arrive at your conclusions, but that's how I arrive at mine. And again, we could all be wrong. I'm just saying I have something to back up my opinion with. Okay? But all of this, to go back to pretty much this paragraph about Orwell and Huxley, who were the authors of 1984 and Brave New World, respectively, and that all of this is happening now, and that it was prophesied, and that we're seeing all of this stuff happen. This, what I got highlighted, is the conditioning of the soil made the world ripe for the tribulation. So that's what I'm getting at today. Now, next week, as always, I don't know from one week to the next what I'm going to talk about. If I don't come up with anything, I may run a premiere of an older video, one that's at least an hour long, so that, it won't be live, but the chat will be live. That's how a premiere is in YouTube. And might do some of that now and then. It gives me a week off anyway. Let's see about the chat. See, somebody has been hidden. I'm not sure what was said to make that person hidden, but I mean, it's okay to disagree as long as they're not being, nasty about it. But, so, I don't know. I think maybe they were just timed out. I don't know. Anyway. Yeah, it's food for thought anyhow. And, if you want this link to this is Wiki. I mean, they have no bias on between Huxley and Orwell here, so they're kind of semi-safe to use on this. But thanks everyone for coming. And like I said, I can't guarantee every live stream will be me speaking live, or whether it will be a premiere, which is one of my old videos that I'm just reloading uploading, and you can have a live chat, so you can still have the fellowship and everybody can be here talking to each other. I just won't be on live. So, and that may happen more often in the future. Like I said, I've been over all this stuff so many times. Sometimes I go over them again live because there might be a different way that I explain something that makes sense to somebody, but sometimes I just don't have anything new to say, and instead of repeating myself live, why not just re-upload the video? So I might do that. Okay, just the message said okay. I didn't see a big problem with that message, but people can give their opinions. Like I say, where I draw the line, as I said when this thing first started, is we need to be balanced between being cordial to people and also standing firm on truth. So, but if somebody was persistent in, calling me a false teacher or something, that's kind of bad. But anyway, thanks for coming, and especially, like I said, going forward, I don't know how many live streams there will be, but I will put up something on Sunday where we'll have a live chat. So, and we'll see you next week, everybody, and take care until then, and hopefully we'll all meet each other, if Jesus comes in the rapture. So, there you go.